everything. So next up, we have the illustrious Paul Barret with his lion's mane of hair. He's going to be talking next. So Paul, take it away.
Yeah, I'm just going to share my screen here. Can folks see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I'm basically gonna cover like kind of seems like a weird combination of React and Three.js. So it's how to what's involved in this. And basically it's a breakdown of, you know, is this a good idea? Like is combining these two things, like they always try and come up with new ways of doing stuff, and is this one of them? That is it a good idea, or you just end up with like sticking two weird body parts together that don't make sense, as Bart is demonstrating there. So basically we'll cover just what Three.js is first. Three.js is it's cross-platform. You don't need any plugin or anything like that. It's a library that's works in all browsers. It's used to create and display, you know, 3D graphics, and it makes use of Canvas and WebGL. So if you've got a kick-ass graphics card, it's going to make your Three.js experience pretty good. It's widely used, so pretty much anytime you go onto a website that has any kind of 3D on it, 9 times out of 10 it's going to be Three.js that is behind it. And it's easy to use. Question mark. The reason I put the question mark there is, can we make it easier? Yeah, you could go and write all the raw 3D and the rendering pipeline, all that. Three.js definitely takes like the major effort out of that. It provides a lot of ready to roll kind of API endpoints that will or utilities that will basically facilitate you being able to present 3D models or interactions and stuff on a website. Just in case you're living under a stone and you don't know what React is, React's a component-based library for JavaScript, mainly used for creating UIs. And it's basically probably the most popular JavaScript libraries on the go at the minute for creating single-page apps. It's declarative, so you know it's a nice abstraction away from vanilla JavaScript, so you can get stuff done a lot more quickly, and you can architect things in a clean way and stuff like that. All the nice stuff that comes with it, and you know, it maintains state, and we can leverage that when it comes to React. So what's React 3 Fiber? So it's basically a layer that sits on top of React Three.js. So it's an extra abstraction again on top of an abstraction, on top of an abstraction. They're always good. So it allows you to build, make it in the same way React's declarative. We can also do the same with Three.js. So we can build reusable components, and they're self-contained. And also, as I mentioned before, we can make use of React's state. You know, any changes in React state then goes down to Three.js. And also, you get all the nice things you get with React. You know, your favorite libraries, you can pull them in, so you can make use of those guys as well. And it's fully Three.js compatible. So everything you can do in Three.js, you can do in React 3 Fiber. It is actually quite a thin layer sitting on top of Three.js. So every kind of utility or whatever, ability to create base models and all this sort of stuff, you're not restricted. It's not taking anything away. It's only adding to Three.js. And people would think, oh, because it's an extra layer on top, it'll slow the thing down. It doesn't do extra work to get that nice React functionality in there on top of Three.js. That is not the case. There's no slowdown because it actually renders the Three.js separately from React. So you don't get any kind of slowdown at all. So it's just all you know, sugar syntax that sits on top of Three.js. So we're just going to look at a simple example here. Because it's a lightning talk, I'm not going to go anything too complex. So we're just gonna this is supposedly a rotating 3D cube. So we'll just look to see how that gets built up. First of all, we're going to look at how it works in Three.js. So I'm just going to, I don't know if you can see the code well enough, but there's a typical bit of code in vanilla Three.js. So we're pulling in Three.js at the top, we're creating a scene, a camera, you have to specify all the details about the camera. Then you've got a render, you pull that guy in, WebGL. Then we're going to create our cube. And then inside that, it takes two parameters. It's a simple box geometry. So basically that's just a Three.js comes with like lots of simple geometry, like cubes and spheres and whatever, and planes and stuff like that. Now we're just going to give it a simple material. In this case, it's green. It's got that weird 0x at the start of it, but we're specifying the color. We've then got an animation loop. All that's doing is rotating on the X and the Y a little bit at a time, like by 0.01. And then we're going to set the render area. We're going to append a child and then scene, add the cube to the scene, and then camera position Z is basically pull back 5 units. So it's just like if you didn't do that Z change, the camera would be stuck in the middle of the scene as well. So it just pulls it back so you can actually use it to view the scene. And then we call our animate function that does the rotation. And finally, we add the whole of Three.js to the DOM. So let's compare that with React 3 Fiber. So anybody that's worked in React will see lots of familiar stuff. We're pulling in a component called Canvas and use frame hook as well. So just like React, we're actually going to create, so typically the box, in this case the cube component, would live in its own file, but I'm just pulling it in here for simplicity's sake. But just not like any React thing, you'd probably separate this out to its own file. But here, we've got them both in the same file as the main app component as well. We're creating a ref to the mesh. And then instead of that animate function on the left, we're now using this use frame. So anybody that's familiar with game development, there's always like a function that kicks in where you pass in a delta value, and it knows anytime you see frames per second and stuff kicking off. This is basically the animation that takes place every cycle that an animation occurs, and that's what that use frame is using is basically doing. And it's basically doing the exact same thing. We're rotating at pi 0.01 on both the X and the Y axis. And then we pull in a mesh ref, and we're using our ref so that it knows how I'm talking about this specific mesh. And we're very similar to on the left. We're creating a box geometry. We're also creating a basic material, again, green. So you'll notice a slight strange little thing if you're used to React. You'll see normally when we specify a component, we have an uppercase first letter. And anytime you see the uppercase first letter in relation to React 3 Fiber, that's something React 3 Fiber specifically supplies you as the user. Whenever you see the lowercase first letter of a component, that's actually directly coming from Three.js. There's like a one-to-one mapping between all these lowercase ones and a function within Three.js itself. So it's a weird one, but it's a really easy way to identify stuff that should belong to Three.js, and nearly all of them have args passed into them. And basically, the args is basically if you call the function and then pass a comma b comma c in, the args is the exact same thing as that. And then we've got our app, and we're just using a simple bit of style. And you see there, blah blah blah. Canvas, inside the canvas. Canvas comes with its own default camera, so we don't have to set that up. So that comes for free. And here's a slightly more complex one. Here, this one, if you just go straight down to the bottom, you can see we're pulling in 2 boxes this time. So we're able to reuse that box component, and we're positioning it in 2 different places. and we've also added extra light and stuff like that. So I'm not. Oh, and there's also click events. So in hover, the box will change color and etc. So you also get helper stuff, and they've been really creative. They call it, instead of three, they call it drei, the German for three. It's just a series of helpers, so it allows you just basically to, you can rotate around the scene, control shaders, shapes, and you just pull it in like that with that import. Now here's all the benefits, I think, of React 3 Fiber. So familiar ecosystem, more functionality with less code. I know the two examples I showed you, they seemed very similar, but hopefully you saw it was a lot cleaner, and you could also reuse a lot more easier. I believe it was easier to follow especially if you're a React developer. So given those benefits, it's quicker to turn around a 3D scene as a web site. You get all these helper components. Like if you look on that drei Git repository, it's just full of them. There's like about 50 or something in there, if not more. And you get this nice render loop hook, the use frame one, so which is quite nice to use. And I believe it's easier to code with, especially if you know React. Caveat. So here's a couple of resources, just a couple of different bits and bobs. If you want to like model, get Blender. If you want to, oh yeah, there's also that very last one. They also have an additional extension on top of that. If you want to do VR, so if you want to do web plus VR, there's a React version of that too. It's built by the same guys. It just adds controllers and stuff like that specifically for the web. So yeah, that's me. I'll just show you like in a very quickly some like daft things you can build with this. See a nice spaceship, and that spinner that allows me to interact with that comes from drei. There's another one here, just a nice like portal scene. So yeah, that's pretty much me. I will stop sharing.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Paul. Which is very, very cool. Like that stuff you showed me in, like I thought that was in some sort of like modeling software. But I seen the cool sandbox link and like that's in the browser.
Yep,
That's
all in the
insane.
browser. It's all within the browser. There's basically nothing you can't do that you wouldn't do in a game engine. So something like Unity or I'm not going to put it up there with Unreal Engine. I was not going to do crazy stuff like that, but like kind of low poly kind of stuff you'll get away with pretty handy.
So we have a couple of questions through here. Actually, the last one coming is more relevant than what you just shown. So the question was like, were those models made in Blender, or are they well, I'm elaborating on the question, but like, are they handcrafted in React and Three.js?
No, so Three.js supplies some like default, cubes and spheres and toruses and all that sort of stuff. If you actually want to properly model stuff, you create it in a software like Blender. And there's an open source format. I can't remember the name of it. It's like it's not an overly familiar one, but it's like GLC or something. Not GLC, but there's an export in Blender. You can export that out. You can also export animations out and stuff like that. But then you could attach on-click events to them, and so like you could force an animation to occur if you like clicked on something, or you could add a bind keys to it, so like you get your first-person shooter if you wanted to, or dungeon crawler or whatever. Now that's a big ask because there's like usually large teams of people, but you can technically do all that stuff.
Yeah, the possibility sure agrees with that stuff. So another one coming through is like, is there like a core component library, kind of like like we have like core UI or material UI? Is there like a library of like elements? Because React is a very component based system. Is it like some sort of library you can reuse elements from?
Yeah, well, I mentioned there drei library that comes with a lot of presets. So if you want to make the vanilla version, you just want to keep it clean and keep your project small, you use the main React 3 Fiber. But if you then want to go, hey, you know what? I'm using a standard thing here. I'm using when I showed you those things spinning around and stuff, that was a drei component that you pulled in that allowed your mouse to drag around the scene and rotate the scene and all that sort of stuff. And there's also shaders. So anybody that's ever done game development, writing shaders is a nightmare. They're like crazy complicated, and you can actually write proper shaders. You kind of pass them in a bit like the way you pass CSS into style component. Like and you can do, you know, anything you can do in a normal game shader, you can do here as well. But there's
Okay.
not just that. There's lots of stuff.
Okay, and then the last one. This is actually for me. I've tried to before, like get into like animation things, but I know nothing about animations. Like when we use Three.js, and there's a lot of like numbers and calculation. Like, what is the kind of like the learning curve trying to get into this kind of side of building a web application? Is it steep? Is there things you can learn or pick up?
Yeah. So you so I showed the very simple cube, right? That was like the most simple thing, because it's only like a lightning talk. And you can add a sphere and stuff. I'll be honest, you're not going to get very far with those. You need to pick up a bit of 3D modeling experience, or you can just buy a 3D model off the web. There's like loads of, or just download, and there's loads of free resources and stuff like that. And then the main thing you want to do is bring in a bit of software like Blender and export it so that's usable within Three.js or React 3 Fiber. And once you got that in, that can also come in with like materials and come in with animations and stuff like that. And then it's up to you to code to like when to kick off that animation or when to apply that material or texture or whatever. And you can change them on a coding level. So any experience of React, you can hugely apply here. Like React. So you're already up. If you already know React, you're already on a like a higher pedestal. But when it comes to 3D software, Blender 3. I'm a big Blender fanboy, as you know. Blender 3.0 literally just came out like in the last week, and there's a famous donut tutorial. This guy, Australian guy called the Blender Guru. He starts you know nothing, and he'll take you to knowing something, and he just builds donuts. But it's just a very good way to like build up your skill set, and then once you've got the knowledge, you can apply that to something you actually want to make yourself.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Paul. Thank you very much.